Emory McCoy was one of the people that I got to meet at the Glenville Community Center. He had a store down there, and he talked about going down in the old village area to his store, and he watched the water just ease up, creep on over and take over the whole foundation forever. He was a dear man. Well, the Nantahala Power and Light Company was hugely interested in making a chain of lakes come up from Tennessee. They were pressured by the U.S. government needing to build plants where they could produce aluminum to make airplanes. They already knew they looked like they were going to end up in this world war, and they needed to get ready for it. So it was like big government against the little people. The general manager of the Nantahala Power and Light Company, Mr. Thorpe, he was writing a letter to his colleagues in Pittsburgh that he was starting to study the Glenville village for the possibility that it might make a good site for a dam and be enough head to be worthwhile. Now that was 7 days before the Depression fall in October of 1929. There were 64 households in Glenville on both sides of the river. The river ran through the whole valley. It's about 15, 20 feet wide. And it meandered around little mountains and all the way through to the north end. The Glenville Valley was surrounded by a ring of higher mountains. It's sort of like a natural boundary for the village. And it had already been cleared of quite a bit because it was a farming community. There was 226 people, adults and children all together. And they were maintaining stores and gas stations and boarding houses and churches. There was 3 churches. There was the Hamburg Baptist Church, the Glenville Wesleyan Church, and the Methodist Episcopalian Church. And they were real proud of a brand new school. When they began in 1930, they weren't sure of how much land they would need. And they were just trying to determine it. And they were only offering $30 an acre at that time. All through those 12 years of negotiation with the Glenville people, the power company kept wanting to change their plans for the dam to get bigger and bigger. And they wanted to increase the proposed lake so that they could get the capacity they needed for the water force. And then they just kept going more and more up the river. Mistrust and anger started to brew because of their vagueness of how much of their land they wanted, whether it included their house or not. To the power company, they didn't care about the buildings. They were just going to bulldoze them down. But the local people in Glenville got together and they decided they weren't going to sign any options until they had seen the surveys, so they'd know if it was going to take in their houses and their barns or not. They wanted a fair price. For instance, they didn't know if they needed to flood the Fowler House Inn. Now, the Fowler House Inn was a huge draw for summer people. Max Fowler, the owner, was a businessman, and he had invested a lot of money in surveying residential lots that he wanted to sell to the summer people. He wanted to bring more summer people into the valley to help the economy. But the power company was ruining all his plans for profits. In fact, the price of real estate just plummeted, and you might as well say it just practically worthless because they were going to flood the whole thing. The Glenville folks needed a fair price for their house and their land. And it's tough times. It was during the Depression. It was a double blow. So the stress was just too much for Mr. Fowler. In fact, he died of a heart attack at 58 years old. and that left his wife, Cornelia Fowler, and their grown children to deal with the power company. By June of 1940, time was up. They had to get out. Now the bulldozers started coming up. They brought in power up from Franklin so that they could do big floodlights, so that they could work around the clock, night and day and night, just keep on going. They had 4.5 miles of trees and woods to bulldoze down, and they put them in piles of brush to burn. And it left a barren mountain with peaks of little mountains, like little bumps on a bald landscape. And it was 113 years of little mountain community life there, all going up in smoke. I don't know of anyone that is still alive that actually lived down there. The times now, it's just so many years after it passed. But even the people that I met in the Glenville Community Center weren't angry at that point. They were just going about their daily business, trying to create a new town, open up shops and all, and it's a beautiful lake to look at, you know.